At that time, nigga.
Beat me up, Scotty.
This ain't what you want. Yeah, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. A lot of money, I'm afflicted. Disrespectful, huh? I pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle. Burn his ass with all the shit I've been through. Bleeding crazy cause I'm mental. Bipolar, PTSD, ADHD, anxiety. Then the grill in my dental. I did stay time, huh? No paid time, huh? Telling these still an issue. Not niggas about to kill you. God said my body be my temple. I'm straight up, got no riddle, huh? Hey, I'm a South rapper, but I drill too. Hey, I'm a South rapper, but I drill too. And I will you on, hey, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. Lot of money, I'm a flexing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle. This ain't what you want, hey, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. Lot of money, I'm a flexing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle, huh?
Where I'm from, the black sun, inconspicuous Teflon. Can't surmount to this Athlon. High priest to the trap nuns. Moving blocks, weigh 40 tons. Got bars I made, son. Luminous like ray guns. Or divine lightning, hot blaze on. You serve the throne, call me rude to Rick. I dismiss a game of small rudiments. El Ket Lord that drew a kid, true misfit. Egypt did, twin mystic, dual wielded. Esau touch my Muhammad. I transform to a fine mist. Superpower my mindset. Straight out of myth lore. I've been a witness to gin wars. Assuming the demons with encores. Moving a fever, don't try to whore. Levitate my psychic weight to astral space that I hit detonate. Let the bomb jump off into cyberspace. Viva Las Vegas, I radiate. Viva Las Vegas, I radiate. Interdimensional stargates.
OGs in the West. Lot of money, I'm a blessing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle, huh? This ain't what you want, hey, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. Lot of money, I'm a flexing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle, huh? This ain't what you want, hey, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. Lot of money, I'm a flexing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle, huh? This ain't what you want, hey, not what you expected. OG Smith & Wesson. Lot of money, I'm a blessing. Disrespectful, huh? Pop a nigga like a pimple. Smoke his ass like a swistle, huh?
Purchase your lease today.
93. We back in here. So hopefully everything is good now. Just had to make a few corrections with the stream settings. So we will see how it goes this time. Yeah, the last live stream, I just had to alter my stream settings. The stream wasn't coming through as clear as I would like, so I just had to tweak a couple settings. But I didn't say anything or do anything, so it's fine. Pretty much we're just cooking up some symbols. So we all good. But anyway, we are in here now. So let's lay down some game. We put on some background music at least. 1 second here. Let's see. Fine, I'll just put that on for now. Alright. All right. That should be good. Just verify all the settings here. Okay. All right, let's get to it. Just pull this up. All right. Anyway. This is November 11th. So we will write that as 11/10. Well, yeah, November 10th, not November 11th, excuse me. November 10th, 2021. Wednesday. So, we understand 11, 2, 10, 1, 2021, 5. Which takes us to 8. Okay. So today, this particular day, even though it is the number 8, give me 1 second here. Even though it is the number 8, which we know to be the energy of Saturn, we must also consider the 2 and the 1, as well as the 5. We also must consider the master number 11, which is the master seer. The master seer is an empath. To be empathic means you are sensitive to higher frequencies. We also understand the 8 correlates to the universe card. So what I'm doing here is just giving you guys a quick example of how you could decode the mathematics of any day particular. We're just going to use today as an example so we can see these things playing out. So as you go about your day, you will be able to see these patterns playing out, not just objectively, but also subjectively. So essentially, the whole month of November is the month of the Master Seer. We are all more empathic because we are in the month of November, because we understand that November 1st was the Day of the Dead. What this means is the portal to the underworld is at its thinnest. because it is at its thinnest, if we take it a step back to October 31st, as well as October 30th, we understand October 31st was Halloween. October 30th was what they call Angels Night. Before it was Angels Night, it was Devil's Night. This has Gothic origins. So essentially that culture came to America. We inherited the Gothic culture, which is why Devil's Night or Angel's Night was very big in the Midwest, especially in the city of Detroit, where they would set houses on fire the night before Halloween. So it can be any number of houses on fire on that given day, just overwhelming the fire station. But that's just the culture in that particular place. But it came from an older source, because essentially America, we have inherited essentially the culture of the world. We have the whole world concentrated in a cube, essentially, which we understand is the energy of the 8, the energy of Saturn, because Saturn is the universe. It represents the entire universe compressed into a cube. So when the entire universe is compressed into a cube, that gets what is called the planet Earth, or as we call Asia, or as it was called Asia. Let's take this a step further. If we take into consideration the 2, the 1, and the 5, the moon rules over the 4th house, the sun rules the 5th house, Mercury rules the 3rd and the 6th house of astrology. The 4th house deals with the subconscious. The 5th house deals with creativity. The 3rd house deals with communications, and the 6th house deals with self-improvement. So we're going to see remnants of all of these energies manifest today in some form or fashion. So you're going to feel the need to improve yourself, whether it is your health, your finances, anything that requires your service. So you're going to offer your service, essentially your job. So you're going to essentially become more of the servant, not necessarily become, but you're going to reflect that particular energy. We will want to perform service for others more naturally, because it also rules the 3rd house, because Mercury also rules the 3rd house of communications. We're going to feel more inclined to have conversations, especially when they deal with self-improvement. Any conversations that deal with self-improvement will be welcomed. Then we add that to the energy or the house of creativity. Creative self-improvement, that will be even better. And if we add the element of the moon or the fourth house, if we're talking about all these activities being done at home, even better. So the fourth house again represents the subconscious, but it also represents the home. Fifth house, entertainment. I'll just put entertain. Third, we just say speech. 6, improvement. I'll just put improve. Speech, home, entertain, improve. Entertain can be replaced with creative or creativity. To communicate your creativity, your self-creativity from the home in order to improve your standing in the world. So home communications, that's 3 and 4, home communications. What type of communications? Entertaining communications. As we know, the Leo represents the stage, or the fifth house represents the stage. So not only is it dealing with home communications where we have created an artificial stage. To create an artificial stage or a lunar stage, because it is charged by the moon. So it is not a solar stage as it normally would be, as Leo is ruled by the sun. And because Leo is the stage master, the stage is normally solar charged. That's why we focus all of our attention on the stage if you are viewing the stage. However, if you add the lunar frequency to this solar frequency, so now the sun has to balance its frequency with the moon, which makes it lunar charged. Now we have a lunar stage. What will be the difference between a solar stage and a lunar stage? Well, as previously mentioned, a solar stage is more about you have people focusing on a center point. So you could say everyone in the room will be focusing upon the stage, or a center point, a 0 point. So the focus will be on a singular 0 point, which is why the symbol of the sun is a circle with a point inside of a circle. So you have the crowd and the energy is centered, is being channeled towards the center. That represents the solar. However, when we're dealing with the lunar, with the crescent has 2 points. So you have that upper tip and you have the lower tip. So now the energy is being filtered through 2 paths. That's why I was going to say energy. That's why the moon correlates to the number 2, because it has 2 openings or 2 outlets instead of a concentration. So instead of energy being concentrated into a 0 point, now energy is being expressed from multiple points. This is a combination of the 4th and the 5th. So once we add the 3rd and the 6th, or the influence of Mercury, we understand Mercury is all about speed. So now we have this whole combination between the sun and the moon. Now this is happening in hyper speed. So this lunar stage that has been created exists in hyperspace, as Mercury brings that hyper energy. So now this is an energy within hyperspace. So you have a lunar stage existing in hyperspace. Hyperspace just represents our upper intelligence. So because hyperspace represents our upper intelligence, we must be in hyperspace in order to move at hyper speed, because we need a space in order to create motion. So the space that is provided via the upper intelligence, as we call the higher self. The higher self manifests when we are in a hyperspace. So our upper intelligence or higher self or holy guardian angel manifests in hyperspace, as we call the invisible mist. The invisible mist is created via lunar waves. So you need lunar waves, which we naturally produce when we sleep, but also when we meditate. So when we are generating lunar waves, it emits an invisible mist. And through that invisible mist, we are able to manifest the holy guardian angel, which houses our higher intelligence or upper intelligence. And this is why it represents our higher self. The higher self just means our higher mind. The higher mind. The higher mind exists once again in hyperspace, meaning we don't readily have access to it because we exist in the solar realm. We are charged by the sun, so we must be charged by the moon in order to manifest that hyperspace or those lunar waves that generates that invisible mist. All right. So not only is the 215 being manifested once again, channeled through the 8, it is also Wednesday, which is the day of Mercury. So hyperspace is already being generated naturally because it is the day of Mercury. So we're going to naturally want to move faster. We're going to naturally tap into our logic and reason without much effort, because this is the background influence. The planetary influence in the background will be manifesting these currencies naturally. This is a example of currency versus money. The planets manifest currency. So just to make that clear. So they have their own currency. Every planet has its own currency. So just like every country has its own currency, every planet generates its own currency. So because we are in the energy of Mercury, we are naturally in hyperspace. So when you combine that natural hyperspace with the energy of the 8, which is the result of the 215, now we get to see what's really going on here. So let me write this in a different way. So let me do it purely symbolic. So 215 8. Then Wednesday. All right. Just making sure everything is. So this would be the purely symbolic way to write this, or to understand today's currency. So essentially, I just showed you the long way to arrive at this conclusion, which summarizes everything into a simplistic expression, but we can expand it into infinite dimensions. So essentially, every day has some type of equation, some type of planetary equation. We understand some planets are friendly towards each other and other planets are not. So essentially, all of these points represent an intersection. So we have an intersection between the sun and Mercury. We have an intersection between the sun and the moon. We have an intersection between the sun and Saturn, and we have another intersection between the sun and Mercury. But this intersection, instead of being horizontal, it's vertical. So we have a horizontal intersection with the sun and Mercury, and we also have a vertical intersection between the sun and Mercury. So if we're talking about horizontal and vertical, we're talking about positive and negative. So that means the sun and Mercury are manifesting both their positive and negative energies, or masculine and feminine, if we want to describe it in that way. So Mercury essentially is manifesting an energy of androgyny, right? Because Mercury is manifesting an energy of androgyny. Give me 1 second here. Saying my Apple Pencil needs to be charged. All I have to do is plug it into the iPhone for a couple minutes, so it's no problem. So what we see here is, because the sun and Mercury are manifesting both the masculine and feminine principles, Mercury becomes androgynous, which essentially Mercury is androgynous naturally, but now it is solar charged. So we have a solar charged androgyny. However, we also understand, as previously stated, that solar charge is wrapped in the invisible mist of the moon. So even though it is a solar charge, the light is not blinding. It's not a blinding light like you're trying to stare into the sun. It's like staring into the moon. You can actually stare into the moon because the light is more graceful. The light is now more refined. So what the moon does, the moon refines the light of the sun so you can actually gaze at its brilliance. So the moon filters the rays of the sun so that we can actually view it. Not necessarily with the physical eyes, but the third eye. We can utilize our third eye or our lunar sight to gaze upon light that normally cannot be viewed. Again, if we try to stare directly into the sun, if it's not sunrise or sunset, then we're not gonna have a good outcome. However, if it is lunar charge, it's basically like putting on a pair of sunglasses. So because it is lunar charge now, because you have put on a pair of sunglasses, now you can actually take the brilliance of the sun without it, overwhelming you. So now you have a pair of sunglasses. You have a lunar tint. You have a lunar tint in order to gaze at something that normally cannot be gazed at. So because of the lunar tint of the moon, now we're able to unravel the greater mysteries of the universe, and that is the energy of Saturn. That's why Saturn is at the bottom, representing that cube, like the Baphomet sitting on the earth, or the cube, the Lord of the world. So that Sun and Saturn manifestation is the Lord of the world. So now we understand that that is a more material energy moving downwardly. So it expands our consciousness. What I mean by downwardly, meaning the energy is becoming compressed into a cube, as we call the earth. So now all of this energy is being compressed at the bottom. So let me write all this out. The pen should be, well, the pencil should be good now. So let me write all this out so that it makes more sense. Well, not write everything out, but keep it symbolic. So you see, it becomes a lot easier to interpret these things when you're just purely gazing into the symbols, because the symbols are infinite layers of intelligence. So essentially, even though these are the signs or the symbols of the Sun, Mercury, Moon, and Saturn, they go way deeper than that. This is just what we're using it for in this particular example. But however, again, these symbols are essentially, they go beyond astrology. They can go into alchemy, which is a separate science in and of itself. So even though we use these symbols in astrology, they are not necessarily exclusive to astrology, even though that is like that in the mainstream, because you know most people are not alchemists. However, if you go back to the older texts of astrology, there was no separation between astrology and alchemy. So essentially, when you are reading an astrology book, they are speaking with alchemical terms. They are speaking from the perspective of alchemists. So the whole lead to gold, you know, transforming lead to gold, you can translate that into the planetary energies. It doesn't necessarily have to deal exclusively with metals. So lead to gold just represent the 7 metals, as we call the 7 chakras. So what we're calling the 7 chakras, the alchemists call the 7 metals, because we have the 7 metals already in our body. We just learn how to manipulate these 7 metals and create elixirs, which they call the elixir of life. And again, I spoke about that yesterday. But this is essentially an example of, even though astrology is used the way it is used, and we are used to using it in one way, we can expand its use, especially when we understand that the older or the further you go back in history and see how astrology was used by the ancients, they combined it with alchemy. They did not separate everything. Today, everything is separated. Astrology is separate from astronomy, and astronomy is separate from alchemy. All these things are separate sciences, and you have to learn them separately. But we did not learn them separately. We learned all of these things together because they connect. They are interconnected. So because all of these disciplines are interconnected, you were learning all at the same time. So that's essentially why I tried to teach all of these things collectively. So even though I may speak about astrology or use astrology symbols, again, we are going beyond astrology into the realm of alchemy so that we can better understand these principles outside of the scope of planetary influences. Because once we move out of the realm of planetary influences, we move into the realm of metals. So if we move into the realm of metals, now Mercury becomes quicksilver. It could also be the element of Mercury as well, even though Mercury is dangerous. Saturn becomes lead. The sun, of course, will be gold, and the moon will be silver. So now we have a combination of gold, silver, quicksilver, and lead. Right? So what we have is a combination of 4 metals. So you can say these 4 metals are the most active if we are speaking strictly alchemically. So you see, when we go into the realm of alchemy, now we go into a whole different study, because if we turn planets to metals, and these metals are present in our body already, we have these metals already present. So the same way we say we have chakras, which can correlate to planets. 7 chakras, 7 inner planets. Of course, there's 10 planets, but the 7 inner planets. We're talking about the same thing. Chakra, planet, metal. Chakra, planet, metal. We're all talking. I'm not going to say it's the same thing. It is the same thing. It is just on different frequencies. So a chakra, a planet, and a metal is the same thing. It's just a different frequency or a different hertz. We'll just say a different hertz, just to even make it even more plain. So the deeper we go into this, we see that even though we think we're talking about planetary energy somewhere off in space, we're really not talking about anything cosmic at all, as space is a hologram. And that's why I always say that, this whole space exploration and all this, space is the ultimate distraction, when our focus should be in the inner earth, the subterranean planes, because that's more realer than what we consider space to be. We're so fascinated with all these planetary motions, so on and so forth. But if we never bring it back to, well, how is this affecting us in real time? How is all of these planetary energies affecting your psyche? Because the planets affect our psyche. But how do they affect our psyche? Because it is an invisible current. You cannot necessarily see with your eyes how chakras, planets, and metals are connected. So this is why, again, the month of November is the month of the empath, because that empathic energy allows you to see that invisible mist that was mentioned earlier. That invisible mist cannot be detected with the physical eye, but it can be detected with the third eye, which is just lunar sight. You can detect it with your lunar sight. So the same way people say you have to open your third eye, an alchemist would say you need to increase the silver in your blood. That's how an alchemist would allow you to, to understand, because they're not going to speak Eastern terms. We're so used to speaking, the Eastern terms with chakras, so on and so forth, because we're integrated in the New Age. But if we're talking about prior to this, because all this was not mixed with Eastern lingo. Again, this is just modern times. We have mixed everything with lingo. You can say the Eastern lingo may be more popular. Again, people are they know about chakras more than they know about metals. That's just a fact at this point. But that's purposeful. That's not an accident. It's supposed to be that way, because if we start dealing with alchemy, it becomes more complex. So astrology in and of itself is a lot to grasp. So when we add all this into the realm of alchemy, it becomes even more complex. But again, for the alchemist, for the mystic, for those who are interested in this path, this actually becomes an addition to your insight. This doesn't make it more challenging. This makes it more interesting if you're actually interested. But for those who are not, this is why, you know, the mainstream doesn't acknowledge any of this, because it takes lunar sight. So if we're talking about astrology, if we're talking about chi, if we're talking about chakras, if we're talking about energy work, all these things that we speak about is based upon the lunar sight. It is not based upon things that we can detect with our physical eyes. The only time we're able to detect things with our physical eyes if they have already essentially took on their final stages in the energy world. So essentially when they say disease is created energetically first. So before you have any physical results of disease, it already has taken place on an energy level. So when we see the physical manifestation of it, it's actually in its last stages because it has already built up the energy necessary for it to alter the flow of your chi. All disease is a result of the disturbance of your chi flow. So once your chi flow becomes disturbed, then disease can begin to develop. But disease cannot develop as long as the chi is flowing properly. But this is why we don't speak about chi over here in the West, because, you know, we have a pharmaceutical, you know, industry that will completely be obliterated overnight if we taught people how to heal themselves. So of course, you know, this is why all of that gets cut off and we become, you know, mainstream scientists, because this essentially allows people to heal themselves. So since everything that I speak about is self-healing, your ability to awaken the fullness of your consciousness, which is the exact opposite of what the mainstream wants you to do, which is why they continue to promote lies. Because again, this takes power away from them. They're not going to do anything that takes power away from them. So this is why this stuff will never be connected on a mainstream level, or there will always be speculation, because it actually works if you can connect the dots. And this is essentially where I'm getting at here. You have to connect the dots. It's not enough to essentially, you know, just be aware that the planets have some type of effect on us. That's obvious. But what effect it has on you on a personal level, you have to go through a journey to discover that. And essentially, the journey we go through to discover how these energies affect us personally, you're going to learn all of this science on the way. So in order to answer that question, you have to learn all of these sciences. So by the time that question is answered, you have learned all of these sciences. So now you have all of the proof that you need. Just by taking the journey, you will acquire the proof that you need to know that all this is real. And this is why we see the same science manifested in different ways. So again, the astrologer says planets. The Eastern mind says chakra. The Western mind says metal. But we're all talking about the same thing, just on different layers or levels of consciousness. So there's no difference between, you can say, Saturn and the root chakra in lead. The lead metal is similar to the planetary frequency of Saturn, which is similar to the frequency of our root chakra. Are these all different things? Yes, they exist. You can say Saturn is all the way in space. Your chakra is inside you, and the metal is in your blood. So do they exist on different levels? Absolutely. But do they have a connection? Absolutely. They are connected through the invisible mist that we call dark energy and dark matter. That is the invisible mist that connects all of these things. And that's why dark energy and dark matter is so mysterious, and, you know, most people just truly don't understand it, because you can't understand it from the lens of a scientist, because it goes beyond science. Because you have to explore the invisible mist, or the abyss, as we call it. Dark energy or dark matter is the abyss, as we call Dolph. or gnosis. Gnosis, Gnostic, Christ. Gnostic takes you to Christ, which is the Christ consciousness, or the 33 frequency, 33 hertz. That's really what it's about. So all these numbers are just hertz. The Christ consciousness, 33 hertz. 33 hertz takes you to the abyss, or Doth, or the state of gnosis, which then generates that dark energy / dark matter, which exists in abundance everywhere. See, when we truly understand dark energy and dark matter, we cannot think other than abundantly. So essentially the same way, let me give you an example of what I mean. Let me take it to the mainstream with the law of attraction. Let me just take it to the mainstream for a second so that we can truly understand what's going on here. So for example, the same way in the law of attraction, when they say you have to have an abundance mindset. Abundance mindset. Hey, let me make sure I'm spelling this right. Hold on. Like the spirit is telling me that I may not be spelling that right. Give me a second. Oh, it is right. Hold on. Oh yeah, okay, it is right. So it's like when I'm spelling in all caps, it's like this is why I'm writing in all caps. It's like I notice, like if I just write this abundance in all lowercase, I'm like, okay, but if I do this in all caps, it's like it creates a whole nother. I'm like, wait a minute, did I just spell this right? Anyway, it's a whole nother energy created. That's why I try to write in caps. Anyway, I just want to make sure I'm spelling things correctly. All right. So getting back to the point here. The same way in the law of attraction, it says you have to have an abundance mindset. You cannot create from a state of lack, right? We've all know about this. You cannot create from a state of lack. Right? We've all heard this before. We have all acknowledged this. We've even heard it explained, but you know, they use a lot of poetry. They be very poetic, right? Bunch of poets, right? So all this law of attraction stuff, you know, is just all soothing, right? Because this isn't really going to help you understand the universe. You understand the principle, which is a law of attraction. You understand that, okay, I cannot create from a state of lack. We can say we understand that. But if we never get into the mathematics of why that is, we're missing the point. Meaning, if all you know is this is not enough. Why? You need to know why. Why is that a principle? Because if you don't know the why, then what use? This is essentially why for most people this is not effective, because they never get to the why. They never get past the ego of whatever it is that they're trying to acquire or attract. They're not trying to figure out why. They're just trying to get the result that they're looking for. They're not trying to understand the process, which is invisible, the invisible process. Let me write that. The invisible process. Because most people who speak about this is more it's more about the feel. You have to feel good, right? It's about the feel. They put emphasis on the feel or the emotions, right? They put a lot of emphasis on the feel or the emotions. Again, emotions have no set definition. So emotions is just a bunch of people's opinions of what they think it is. It has no set definition. Why? Because it exists in the abyss, in the chaos. It is not clear what emotions are, even regardless of how much they think they know about it. Again, we have not fully mapped the brain. So essentially our science is limited because there are still questions we don't know. So if we go around thinking we know everything and we still have not even fully mapped the brain, we are still not accessing the deeper chambers. We're just cruising on the surface, and we have become comfortable with cruising on the surface. This is not enough to be effective. It's not enough. You have to feel good. You have to, feel. You have to, work from the heart center, as they say, right? This is all common knowledge at this point. You have to work from the heart center. However, if you don't know, the heart is Venus. Venus is also copper. And we know Venus is also Lucifer. The morning star. AKA intelligence. Then this doesn't make any sense. You have to work for your heart center. But okay, well, if you don't acknowledge this, then what does this matter? What does this matter? If you still feel crazy about this energy, people still feel crazy about this energy. So if we're talking about feel, they need to discover why they feel, how they feel about this. That's what's really going on. So if we're talking about the feel, instead of trying to feel abundant, ask yourself why you feel anything negative about this energy. Then you can actually get to some conclusions. Because if you overcome this, if you get over this, then now everything makes sense. Because now you have entered into that state of dark matter and dark energy. This is essentially the veil that keeps people out of that. So essentially we have become comfortable with just journeying on the surface. With just, people telling us very simplistic ideas. But that doesn't really lead to any permanent healing. It may lead to temporary healing, but not permanent. Because in order to do anything permanent, what do you need to have permanent change? Dark energy, dark matter. Dark energy, dark matter. And what energy is closest to dark energy and dark matter? Well, we have to go to the furthest planet. What is the furthest planet? Pluto. Pluto is over 3 billion miles away from the sun. Almost 4 billion. So that means Pluto does not feel the light rays of the sun. So Pluto has no access to light rays. Pluto only has access to the dark waves. So energy is just waves. Matter is just particles. Waves and particles. And we understand quantum physics. Waves can behave like particles. Particles can behave like waves. So essentially dark energy and dark matter, they can interchange. because that's just quantum physics. So if we understand quantum physics, we understand, okay, dark energy and dark matter are interchangeable. And the best way to understand dark energy and dark matter, we have to understand the darkest planet in our solar system, even though Pluto is not considered a planet. But its effect, this is why Pluto is not considered a planet. This is the underground understanding. This is not what the mainstream is going to tell you, but this is why they demoted Pluto. They demoted Pluto because they wanted to keep the veil open, because the greater you explore Pluto, the deeper you get here. The further you go into Pluto's mysteries, you get to understand what's really going on. So if they demote Pluto, and now we take our focus off of Pluto, then we don't unlock these mysteries. And again, the same way people feel some way about this energy, people also feel a way about this energy. Because Pluto is Hades, who is what? The Lord of the Underworld. So essentially, we have been put to sleep with all this fluff talk, with feel and emotion, which can, that's why people are so fluid with the language, because it has no set definition. So it's essentially, it can be whatever you want it to be. So because it can be whatever you want it to be, that's why it doesn't really penetrate the surface. You're not going to ever hear this type of talk, dark energy and dark matter. Not beyond what we already know. Again, they're not going to connect it to Pluto. They're not going to say, okay, if you truly want to understand these mysteries, you have to understand Pluto. Because you have to understand astrology to make this conclusion. So I then went from alchemy to astrology. Then if we go back to the earth, the Lord of the Underworld, again, this goes back to the hollow earth, as I keep speaking about the hollow earth, the subterranean planes, where aliens truly come from. Aliens are not coming from the cosmos, they're coming from the inner earth. This is how we understand that. But let's actually get a basis of what emotions actually are, because I keep saying there's no set definition. Well, let's establish the definition. We can do this right now in real time so that we can have an understanding, so that you are not deceived. So if anybody is saying anything different than the conclusion we arrive at, then you know they're not telling the truth. So let's do this right now. Let's see what emotions are. Or emotion. What is an emotion? Let's take it through the mathematics. E, 5th letter. M, 13th letter. O, 15th letter. T, 20th letter. I, 9th letter. O, 15th letter. N, 14th letter. Alright, so we got 5, 13, which becomes 4, 5, 4, 15 becomes 6, 20 becomes 2, 9, 15 becomes 6, 14 becomes 5. 5 plus 4 plus 6 plus 2 plus 9 plus 6 plus 5. Alright, so let's do it right now. So we know 5 and 4 is 9. 9 plus 6 gives us that 15, plus 2 gives us that 17. We understand 6 and 5 is 11. 11 going into 17 is 28. Right? And then we have the 9 here, which takes us to 37. So emotion gives us 37, but that's the simple way. That's the simple way. That's if we're adding it this way. But if we do it the long way, we're going to come to a different conclusion. I mean, if we add 5 plus 13 plus 15 plus 20 plus 9 plus 15 plus 14, we're going to come to a different conclusion. So let's see what conclusion we come up with. So let me bring out the calculator. So if we add all this up, 5 plus 13 plus 15 plus 20 plus 9 plus 15 plus 14, that takes us to 91. All right, boom. So we see the difference. All right, so most people, emotion, essentially they're going to arrive at the one conclusion. All right, so if you break down the word emotion, most likely you're going to arrive at this conclusion. It's going to be a number 1. All right, just to verify it, yes. And if you do the basic breakdown, you're going to say that, okay, the 1 came through the 37. But if you do the long breakdown, the 1 is manifested through the 91. So what difference does that make? If we deal with the, again, yeah, I'm gonna have to do all this separate, because this is gonna get way more complex. So we have 1, 37, 91. All of these will be true about emotion. So we understand 1 is the sun, right? 3, 7, that's Jupiter, Neptune. '91, and that's Mars and the sun. So most people will be satisfied with this definition. Okay, emotions correlate with Jupiter and Neptune, as Jupiter represents expansion and Neptune represents the unconscious mind or the psyche. So essentially you can say, if we go by the 37 conclusion, is emotions are the expansion of the psyche. So that wouldn't necessarily be incorrect, as these are all, again, which is the difference between short math and long math. I'm just showing you how deep it can go. So you see, we just use numerology and astrology to come to a conclusion. Now, if we said emotions break down to 1, or the energy of the sun, how will we correlate that? So if emotions is 1, so yeah, let me say that most people break it down to the 1. Then the people that go a little further break it down to 37, and the people that go even deeper break it down to 91. So essentially that was a second layer of understanding. Excuse me. The first layer of understanding would be the number 1. So essentially emotions, if we're going by the definition of the number 1, emotions would then be, because the sun wouldn't necessarily represent expansion, because the sun is a concentrated force. As we know, the symbol of the sun is the circle with the dot in the middle. So that means the energy is being drawn towards that center point. So if we go by the definition of the 1, that means emotions are drawn or contracted or compressed. Emotions are drawn or compressed towards a 0 point. This conclusion will also be true. Why? Because we know that you can be having a beautiful day, and if somebody gives you energy, just let's say something disrespectful to you, now all of a sudden they didn't send energy to your 0 point, which would then affect your emotion. So that will be an outside influence sending currency towards you that then will manipulate your emotional currency. So we also know that to be very true. So not only can our emotional state be affected by an outside source, emotions also are the expansion of our own psychic energy or our own psyche. So both of these definitions would be true. It just depends on how deep we want to go with it. Now, let's go to the last definition of 91. So let's just say you did the long math and you came to the conclusion that emotion breaks down to 91. How does that change the conclusion? Just erase this. So if emotions are 91 and 91 correlates to Mars and the Sun, we understand Mars to be our vitality or our energy, our will. So Mars is all about action, how we push our energy outwardly. So an outward push of inner energy. So outward push of inner energy. That inner energy is the energy of the sun, because the sun represents our personal power. And power is more so concentrated. So the sun is your concentrated personal power. Essentially the power that we just have by being ourselves. Just by being alive, that is our personal power. We all have our own personal power, which has nothing to do with what goes on outside of our aura or our body. Mars then again represents our ability to push energy. So we can say Mars is push. You are pushing the personal power. The personal power is being pushed. Because again, pushed by what? Your will. So because Mars is our willpower, the willpower pushes our personal power outwardly. We can take it a step further, because we understand Mars rules over Aries and traditionally Scorpio. So if we analyze, okay, if we look at emotion and we understand the zodiac signs involved in emotion, if we're looking from the 91 perspective, the emotions is Aries, Scorpio. We just put Scorpio in parentheses as a special point. Then the sun will take us to Leo. So the symbol of Leo. So essentially it's Aries and Leo with an invisible current of Scorpio. You can say Scorpio is more so the invisible mist or the invisible current that connects these two energies. So really when it comes to emotion, you're dealing with Aries and Leo. You're dealing with a cardinal fire and a fixed fire. A cardinal plus fixed fire. So this is the spark, and this is where the energy multiplies or concentrates. Because when the energy is fixed, it is not absorbing or pushing out energy. So the energy is not being pushed out and it's not being absorbed. It is simply being concentrated and multiplied. I don't have enough. I'm just gonna put multi, so I don't have enough room here. Let's make this a little smaller. There we go. So multiply, I just say multi. I think, yeah, there we go. Got enough room, multiply. So we have energy being absorbed, so you can say energy being absorbed from Aries and multiplied by Leo. So we have an absorption of energy, and that energy that is absorbed by Aries is then multiplied by Leo. So what does that have to do with emotion? Make this bigger now. What does that have to do with emotion? So if we come all the way back to the top, we came to the conclusion we have an absorption of energy, or the fire element rather, to absorb the fire element and multiply the fire element. And it is channeled by the Scorpio, the invisible mist of the Scorpio. So how does that all make sense again? Aries, Scorpio, Leo. So when it comes to emotion, we understand emotions can be very sudden. That's due to Aries. So the suddenness of emotions, we can be overtaken by emotion essentially instantly, depending on what's going on, especially if it's intense. That intenseness comes from Scorpio. As we understand, Scorpio represents intensity. So the intensity of emotion comes from Scorpio. The suddenness of emotion comes from Aries. Then the concentration of emotion comes from Leo, meaning that's why we can be mad for a long time, as we call big mad. We get mad, then we get big mad. That's when the emotions begin to multiply. That fire energy within us begins to multiply. Now we go from mad to big mad. So you can say that mad is Aries. So when we're just regular mad or irritated, that's Aries. But when we get big mad, that's Leo. That's that big mad. And because we add that Scorpio in between these energies, the Scorpio adds that extra intensity. As Scorpio is the water element, so you have the water element, which is a downward triangle, in the middle of two upward triangles. So the downward triangle, because Scorpio is so intense, it actually is enough to balance these two upper fires. So even though in most cases 2 fires and 1 water will cancel out the water, because Scorpio is so intense, because it is a fixed water. So if it was a movable water, these fires will cancel it out. But because it's a fixed water, now the Scorpio is adding extra intensity. So fire is already intense by itself. So once you add the water, the depth, to the intensity, now we understand why people could kill. Meaning we can get so riled up in our emotion that we can actually take life. That's why Scorpio represents death. Leo is passion or lust. We just say lust. We ain't even gonna say passion. We're gonna be X-rated. Lust, death. In Aries, you can say creativity. But that actually wouldn't be the true essence of Aries. The true essence of Aries would more so be about self. So let's keep it 100 here. So if we're talking about emotions, because I know we're all over the place now, but this is just how deep mathematics can take us if we allow it. We have to submit to mathematics. That's the whole thing. We have to submit to math, just like we submit to death. Just like we submit to lust. Just like we submit to ourself. So essentially, to be egotistical, you are submitting to yourself or your Aries. When we become lustful, we are submitting to our lust, and we must submit to death. All this becomes easier when we understand mathematics. When we submit, understanding mathematics just means you submit to mathematics. You understand that I need mathematics to solve my problems. Any problem can be solved through the use of mathematics. So any problem I have, I just have to go through my mathematical equations to come to a conclusion. And that conclusion will allow me to transcend my situation. So once again, emotion is truly selfish. So essentially, again, it's based in our personal power. So emotion is based upon our self-observation, or our first house, which is our head, which is our archetypal light. So we just say our archetype. Our archetype. So how we feel about who we are, it is based upon our archetype. So our emotions are based upon our archetype. So if your archetype is Aries, then your emotional currency will be based on the energy of war. So we can say the energy of war moves the Aries because that is their archetype. So our emotion is based upon our archetype. So when we understand our archetype, or our spiritual form, or what deity we are, what avatar, what deity we are, self-deification, that's basically what it is. Emotion is based upon self-deification, your archetype. What is your archetype? So the more you understand your archetype, the more you understand why you feel the way you feel about whatever it is that you feel, or whatever situations that occur in your life. This is why you feel what you feel inside of yourself. This is based upon our archetype. Our archetype is why we feel, either why we like certain things or dislike certain things. Why we feel positive about certain things and we don't feel positive about other things. That is strictly based on our archetype. So that's on a cosmic level or a subterranean level, right? So that's the deepest part of ourselves. Then if we go a level up to lust, now we're talking about a personal level. Again, this is still based on archetype, so our lust or passion is still based upon our archetype, but now we more so have a decision in this process. So now we can more so direct our lust. So lust can be directed, because we can have a lust for life or a lust for anything. So lust essentially is not negative. It all depends on where you direct the lust. It's how the lust is directed that makes it positive or negative. It is not the energy in and of itself. So, when I say lust, I'm not talking about like uncontrolled sexuality, because again, it doesn't have to be applied to sex. You can have a lust for life, a lust for living, a lust for your family. You can have a lust for, anything. It all depends on how you direct the energy, which is again based upon your archetype. So how you direct your lust is based upon your archetype. Also, how you die, your death, will be based upon your archetype. And I'm not just speaking about the physical death, but also our spiritual and mental death. So essentially, when we're able to transcend, when we're able to self-deify, that is a form of death. When you move in accordance with your destiny, that is a form of death, because death also represents new life. So based upon our archetype, we direct our lust. And how we direct our lust will lead to death. Either a permanent death or a temporary death. But the energy of death represents transformation. So wherever death is, it transforms that energy. So if we're talking about an ego death, for example, that is the transformation of your ego. So wherever death manifests, energy is being transformed. So to channel the energy of death, that just means the energy needs to be transformed. So in order to transform energy or transmute energy, we use the force of death to do so. So if your lust is directed towards death or transformation, I need to die in order to give myself new life. To live in accordance to my archetype, I need to kill my ego, who I think I am, to become who I really am. So we must go through the veils of death. we must become masters of death, and that is what makes us immortal. So I know I'm going all over the place, but this is emotion. So if we take it to the 91, you see this is the deepest understanding. So you see the first two, you know, we're pretty much straight to the point. You get a surface level understanding. All these are right, but you see when we took it to the deepest level, now we're talking about the archetype. Now we're talking about cosmic subterranean planes, and this is all based on emotion. Now we're putting ideas together that we didn't even know were connected. All because we understand emotion and we understand how to break down these mathematics. All right. So let me see what's going on. So no, I have not been looking at the comments. Just been focusing. So let me give everybody a shout out. Let's see. So shout out to you, Mary Starseed. Shout out to you, Callie, as always. Much love and success. What's up, Woke Nomad TV? What's up, Healthy Wealthy Frequency? I appreciate everybody for tuning in. So again, I'm not going to take up too much time here. I just wanted to give you guys more depth, as I always do, especially in the Scorpio season here. So I'm going to draw up some more symbols and we'll check out. Again, we don't have to take up too much time. I think I pretty much made the point here. So let me just put on some tunes and we'll check out. Let's see. So let me pause this. Okay. And we go here. 1 second. Pull it all the way up here. There we go. Let's see if it works. Let's see. Should come up in just a second here.
King Meezy on a beat.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna alter it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna take out the harmonics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is full power.
Yeah, yeah.
See, I'm taking out the harmonics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we bout to get it in. Yeah. Turn it up, roll the blunt, grab your weed then. Stop walking on you haters. We like to do it big. All we do is win. Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, we bout to get it in. Turn it up, roll the blunt, grab your weed then. Stop walking on you haters. We like to do it big. All we do is win. Yeah, it is what it is. What they talking about? I always say smoking. Yeah. All the channels through my shotgun third. I always open. On the West Coast now, we always gooey. Bitches always choosy. What you talking about? I raising the stuff while I now live my life like a man. Yeah. Burning on that. When it comes to me and I don't chase anything, including pussy. Live left to the shit and that should be. There's nothing slick till the killer oil and I ain't killer a bust on. Feeling these on my back, no. But the nigga that I burn them. Yeah, we bout to get it in.
All right. So let's see. 1 second. 1 second here. So yeah, let me go ahead and check out. Cause yeah, the stream is going all over the place. So I'll go ahead and check out. I'll get it to you guys a little bit later. 93.